So word around the block is you're having trouble getting kills, securing kills, getting away, and you're dying a lot. So I'm going to teach you a couple of the things I've learned about positioning over the past few years and why positioning is so fundamental and so important that you actually need it to set yourself up for kills. And a lot of the games where you see yourself playing like utter shit, it's probably because of your positioning. You play one game and you're playing very well, and then the next game you're playing like dog shit. Well, it's probably because your positioning is ass. We're going to talk about positioning a little bit, and we're going to basically explain the fundamentals of it and some of the ways you can actually position yourself to set yourself up for kills, how to escape, etc., etc. So let's get started. So we're here in game, and basically what we're going to talk about starting off is why strong positioning actually matters in the first place. So I talked about it a little bit in the introduction, but positioning matters mainly for the fact that if you are not in a good position, then you aren't going to be able to secure very many kills, maybe even not a single kill at that. And one of the reasons is you want to set yourself up so you have the easier shot to hit on the opponent, right? That's kind of like the basics of actually setting yourself up in a good position. You want to have an advantage over the opponent. You want to be able to see him first, so you have more time to actually react to the opponent and take him down. So if I were playing like an angle, like let's say right here, this is a pretty standard angle, right? People play this a lot. Now, one of the things is the opponent is probably going to be pre-aiming this, so it's not the best position to play very often. Like, you don't want to play this over and over, because if the enemy comes around pre-aiming this angle, then you're probably dead, because he already knows where you're at, and you're just kind of holding this, and you're going to be fucking zoning out or some shit. So, I mean, it's still a good idea to play in that angle, but there are many better options is what I'm trying to get at, right? Like, if I were to come here, I would just pre-aim like this, right? This is how I'd be pre-aiming the site. Obviously, I'd clear out this back angle, and then I'd come and I'd pre-aim that. So yes, it's a good angle to hold, but there are just a lot of better options you can play. That's where off angles come in. So positioning is very important to set yourself up so you have more time to react and kill the enemy player. Now, one of the other things that comes in with positioning is having an opportunity to actually escape, so you're not just playing a one and done, and we're going to talk about one and dones too. One and done is where you are in an angle where you can only get one kill and fall back. Now, the reason why I'm making this video is because positioning in this game is a lot different than in Counter-Strike, because in Counter-Strike, one and dones exist, right? But in this game, they still exist to some extent, but with a lot of the characters and a lot of the abilities, one and dones are still very viable. They weren't as viable in CS, but now that you have the opportunity to actually take them and get away with your life, turning them from a one and done to a fallback angle, it's very, very smart to actually take some of these in some engagements, right? So setting yourself up for kills, isolating angles, and getting more than one kill. Those are kind of like the main things that you want to take into consideration with your position. And also along with that, you want to be aware of what's going on around the map. So if I were to be playing right here, like this is a pretty good position, but if my garage isn't being watched, then you never want to play this angle, because not only is your garage just completely open, they can just walk up behind you, but if you get swung from here and you start taking fights, like you can pretty easily get traded from this area, right? So make sure if you're going to play an angle like this, you want to have your garage completely covered, right? That's why I don't like playing this angle very often, because if my garage player gets flashed out and I don't know about it, I'm going to get shot in the back. So I'm just going to go over some angles that you could actually play and the power to them, right? So this is a good angle because you can watch garage without being exposed to this, and that brings in angle isolation, which I brought into a different video a long time ago. I talked about angle isolation. Angle isolation is exposing yourself to as little amount of angles as possible while still covering your angle, right? So like right here, I'm not exposed to anything but garage and CT if they happen to get through CT somehow. So this is a very strong angle to play. Something like this is not very good because you're exposed to garage and you're out in the open, right? Once you're in this area, you can't really fall back. You have to take fights unless you get a kill on Reyna and you go away, or if you're Jet and you dash away. Those are the only real ways you can actually get out of this situation. So just keep that in mind. When you're playing a character with no fallback potential, you want to play a lot safer, and you want to play around angles like this, around this big box, right? Because if you play an angle right here, you are able to easily get back to garage, and you're able to watch this. So we're going to go over the 4 positions. So there are 4 types. So I have split positioning up into 4 types of positioning. You have standard, you have aggressive positioning, you have one and done angles, and you have passive and fallback angles. So a standard position is going to look something like this, right? And we're going to talk about the pros and cons to each of them. That's basically like the gist of this video. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons to each one of these specific angles that you can actually play. I'm going to tell you what's shitty about it. I'm going to tell you what's good about it. And I'm going to tell you when you should actually use it. So a standard angle you want to play when it's basically like you're defaulting out, right? And you don't really know what the enemy team is going to do. So a standard angle would be this area right here. Back here, watching down long. Right here, watching down long. And these are all under the presumption that your garage is being watched, right? Right here, watching long, on top of logs. And even sometimes on top of this. You could consider this more of an off angle though. Now those are basically your standard positions, and the reason why standard positioning is good is because you can test each of these out, right, round by round basis, and you can see what is working for you, right? If none of these are working, then you can try the next one, which is going to be an off angle. So an off angle would be something like right here. This is more of a one and done, but if you're playing a character like Reyna, this is considered more of an off angle. So you can play something right here, you can get a kill, you can use your Q, and you can just zip out and get to this angle right here and watch garage. Do the same thing, fall all the way back to site, right? So if your standard angles are not working out for you, then it's time to switch it up, right? That's what you want to do. You want to switch it the fuck up, and you want to try other angles that could be better. So obviously you have up here, and this is more of an off angle like I was saying earlier. You could consider it a standard angle, but most people fucking don't, so we're not going to. So this angle is pretty good because it's an off angle. So what an off angle is, describing it quickly, is an angle in which the enemy player isn't going to expect, right? So on top of there, that's an off angle. This is an off angle. Anywhere like tucked in this corner, this is an off angle. And then just hiding back there is an off angle. Those are like the 4 off angles I can say off the top of my head here. You can consider this an off angle too. So an off angle is good when your standard angles and standard peaks are not working. You know, you try everything, it's not working. Try an off angle out, see how it works, right? The point of an off angle is to surprise the enemy player and potentially pick up 1 or more kills. Good off angles are off angles that you can actually fall back from. So if I were playing right up on this box, we're gonna use the assumption that I don't have any fallback abilities. An angle like this would be pretty good because you can take the frag, you can fall off, you can check your garage, and then you can start clearing. You can take more fights or just back up and wait for your team to actually arrive so they can help. One and done angles are basically described as angles that you can only get 1 kill in and then you die. Now generally these are bad angles to take. You don't want to take these unless it's like a 2 versus 2 and you need that pick, or if you're down a man and you feel like you can get something done by taking an angle like this, right? So a one and done angle is pretty good, especially on characters like Reyna or Jett, or maybe even, I'm just going to say Reyna or Jett are like the 2 characters that you can take one and done angles with safely, right? Because if you take this one and done, you could surprise an enemy player, you could back out, and you could get to this angle, you could watch garage, and then you could take a swing, try and get a kill, and fall even deeper. If you need to fall into garage, you can. If you need to fall to back site, you can. Right, so one and done angles are good, and they're extremely good at basically catching your opponents off guard. So there's like 3 tiers to it, right? You have your standard angle, which is what we talked about first, which is just, you know, your standard boxes. You want to play around the boxes, you want to be able to fall back safely, whatnot. Then you have your off angle, which is places like up here, where you can still get a kill and fall back. So standard off angle. And then next up you have your one and done angles, stuff like this. In areas like this, where you can only realistically get 1 kill before probably dying. So just keep in mind that when you're playing Reyna and Jett, you can much more safely take these one and done angles, and you can kind of play like a cunt. Like the other team is gonna hate going against you because you're gonna be playing these angles and you're gonna be getting away with it, right? So now another thing is, don't just keep doing one and done angles over and over. Don't do any one thing over and over. That's one of the biggest things with positioning. You don't want to do the same thing over and over. I make this mistake a lot where something works for me, so I do it again and then it doesn't work out, and then I get frustrated, right? Because it didn't work when it worked the one time. And next up we have aggressive positioning. And aggressive positioning would be holding an angle like up here, where you're kind of just, this is somewhat of an off angle, but it's more aggressive, right? You're waiting for this angle, you're waiting for the swing. When he swings out, you should be able to headshot him and fall back, right? Aggressive angles are good to catch the enemy off. You just have to be very careful with taking them, because if you take them sometimes, like here's another example of an aggressive peek. something like this is very aggressive, right? You just have to be very careful with your aggression when you use it. Because if you get killed, that's a very bad day for your team. You don't want to have your team deal with you getting killed. That shit will piss them off. That pisses me off when you are constantly running out and dying. So don't do that. So aggressive angles are good, right? Aggressive angles are good positions to take. If you are able to get up into this cubby, this can be a very good position to take too, but this is 100% a one and done angle. Once you get a kill here, you will most likely not get another, and you will almost go down every single time. So keep that in mind. And for the last angle, we're going to talk about passive and fallback angles. So fallback angles are basically just angles that you can play and you can safely get out, right? So a fallback angle on this site would probably be something like this, where you can take a very passive angle. You can go for a shot. If you don't land it, you can fall back to this angle. You can go for another shot, and then you can try and get out, right? Those are fallback angles, okay? So this is kind of a bad example, right? So obviously this is a very good one. You can take an angle here, you can go over here and just kind of hold a very passive angle here. But if you get overwhelmed on sight, you're kind of fucked. So my advice to you would be take this one shot if you're going to play for retake. Obviously hold this for a bit and then just start falling off and then just hold this angle instead. Because then you're still holding angles, you're still playing passive, but you're falling off sight and you're waiting for the retake. That's kind of like a passive and a fallback angle. You're playing very passive and you're kind of letting the team advance on you, but you try and like get some sort of pick and something happening for your team without getting way too aggressive for absolutely no reason, right? So passive fallback angles are very good if you know how to play them right. So understand that you shouldn't be predictable, and understand that you shouldn't be playing the same angles over and over again. And you have a lot of angles in your kit, right? There are so many angles you can play. This constitutes as an angle. This constitutes as an angle. This is an angle, right? There are just so many angles you can take. You just have to understand the circumstances and what's going on around the map and your odds of actually surviving in that angle. Because your main goal is to get a kill and survive, right? That's almost always going to be your main goal. But if we're going to split it into two classes, you have your standard angle, you have your off angle, and you have your passive fallback for getting a pick and surviving, right? Now for getting 1 to 2 picks and trying to get yourself the upper hand, you have one and dones, right? You have one and dones and aggressive positioning. Those are going to be the big ones to help you get, you know, that man advantage back or any kind of advantage that you might need in the round. So it's split into two groups, right? You have your aggressive and your one and dones. Those are going to be securing you picks and trying to give you the upper hand, but they're also very risky. Then you have your standard and your fallback angle, which are the two those are your two safest bets. Just make sure you're positioning yourself according to what's happening in the round. Like if they have control of garage, obviously take a safer angle, maybe just watch garage, maybe just watch this, right? Just position yourself based on what's going on in the round. Position yourself to have the advantage over the enemy player that's actually coming out to fight you, because a lot of the times when you lose fight, it's because you were in a bad positioning, not because of your gunplay or your aim. So try and understand those two main points about it, right? Positioning is very, very, very crucial to actually get down properly. And when you die, try and think about the position you were in and how it potentially could have been better. That's how you will get better with your positioning. Positioning is one of the most fundamental things in this game, and it's one of the most important things you can actually grasp in this game. So learn how to position yourself properly and learn what bad positioning looks like. I'm going to give you one example of bad positioning before I call it for this video. So a bad position is going to be like this, like I stated earlier, where you're just out in the open, you have to take a fight, you're forced to take a fight, right? That's a bad position. Another bad position would be standing outside of this box, you have no cover to fall back to, right? Because once you actually start taking this, if you get the kill, that's fine, but then you have to walk backwards to get away. You don't want to do that. You want a position where all you have to do is press one key and you're gone, right? That's for your standard angles. You want to be able to press one key and just disappear out of sight. So yeah, that's about all I wanted to say. So I hope you guys enjoyed that video. It was pretty basic. I mainly touched on defense side positioning. I'll probably go over attack side positioning and how you want to position yourself, depending on how you guys actually like this video. Honestly, this video was something I've needed to make for a long time, because a lot of the things I've made about positioning were mainly just fallback angles, which I was talking about earlier, and one and done angles, when I ranted on fucking pro guides about one and done angles and how shitty they are. So I hope you guys enjoyed. If so, leave a like, leave a comment, make sure to fucking, I don't know, subscribe or some shit, and I will see you in the next video, I guess. I'm glad you guys stuck around to the end. It means a lot.